And so she took me to the bathroom in the mirror and she was like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "I'm Jodi." And I was crying. And she's like, "That's not all of who you are. Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Jodi Melissa." And she's like, "Okay, you're getting there." And she's like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "I'm Jodi Melissa Slaughter." And she said, "That is exactly who you are. And nobody can take that away from you." And when you walk into the room, you walk into every room, whether you're invited or whether you decide to enter in as Jodi Melissa Slaughter. And you remind people who you are. And she taught me to enter the room as myself and to always be myself. And so when I introduce myself as Jodi Melissa Slaughter because it encompasses all of who I am. And I was not ever comfortable with that until that experience with my mom.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Sweet Mother podcast. This podcast was created to provide a platform for women to tell the powerful stories of the lives and legacies of their late mothers, the women who helped to shape them into becoming who they are today. My name is Soko Sholanke, and in today's episode, I had the privilege of speaking to Jodi Melissa Slaughter about the life and legacy of her late mother, Joyce Mae Slaughter, a Virginia native who passed away in 2016 after a lengthy illness. If you enjoy these episodes, please subscribe to the podcast and consider leaving a review on whichever platform you are listening. This helps us to get these stories out to as many people as possible. So welcome to today's episode of the Sweet Mother podcast. My very special guest today is Jodi Slaughter. Welcome to the show, Jodi.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Jodi, I noticed on your profile that you have the whole alphabet after your name. M-A, N-C-C, R-I-C, C-M-C, and soon to be PhD. What is going on? Tell me about all that.
I paid for those. No, I'm joking. Wow, by trade, I'm a psychotherapist. And I'm a certified master coach. And that's what all of those letters mean. Yes. And soon to add PhD to those letters.
Yeah. And PhD, and it says strategic leadership.
Yes. I was actually pursuing a doctorate in counseling, education, and supervision. And have just found myself in a lot of leadership roles, leading a business, leading a ministry, and decided to hop over to strategic leadership. Yes. Yeah.
I also noticed that on your profile, it says you are the CEO and founder of various different organizations. Can you tell me about some of those, please?
So Pieces Put Back Together is a women's ministry that I created. And it has literally been the story of my life. That sometimes what we deem as brokenness can be the beginning of something else being birthed in our lives.
Yeah.
And I found that in my situation, that all of the brokenness was part of my purpose in helping other women who found themselves broken in the same areas, rejected, disappointed. And I know that it has become my plight to help them get to the other side of that.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't think that we can be restored and healed. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the pieces, there's evidence that will always be there. Just like if you have a physical scar, the evidence will always be there that there was a scar there, but that doesn't mean that you can't be whole and restored. I'm trying to think what else. What else do you see up there? I don't remember what I put up there.
Breakfast and Girl Talks. Is that for young ladies?
Actually, no. So I have a core group of women who are like they're my girls, right? Like we talk about everything. And we used to have Bible study at my house around my dining room table. And I would fix breakfast and we would get together and we wouldn't just talk about the Bible, but we would talk about life, and we were all in different phases of life.
Yeah.
And that's literally how that was birthed, was around my dining room table. And now I travel places to do Breakfast and Girl Talk. It's really an intimate thing for women to be vulnerable and transparent and begin the conversation to help put their lives back together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you have a coaching and consulting business, is that correct?
Yes, I do. That actually was birthed actually after my mom passed away. So, I'm a psychotherapist, but women were coming to me just about different things. And I wasn't always able to counsel them because they would be in different states. And the things that they needed weren't in the books that I learned and were outside of the scope of counseling. And so I began a coaching, consulting and training business. And now I specifically work with women, but I also work with churches to help destigmatize mental health in the African American community.
Oh, wow. It's an important job.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So besides the alphabet after your name and all of your business and your volunteering, what else do you want us to know about you? Who is Jodi Slaughter?
Wow. I am passionate about helping people uncover their identity and purpose. I am passionate about helping women use the voice that they have and to leave an indelible mark in the earth. I am passionate about walking alongside women to birth the things that they're called to. I am fiercely loyal. I love my family. I love my friends. I am passionate about showing up and being fully present in the moment that I'm given with each of them.
Yeah.
And I've learned, that's a lesson that I learned after my mom passed away.
Mm-hmm.
I am passionate about living life to its fullest. And when the day comes for me to leave the earth, to leave empty, having poured out everything that I was assigned to pour out in the earth.
So much of who I am, and I'll say I'm 48 years old, so I've been around for a little bit. But so much of who I am and who I've become as a woman is because of who my mother was. Mm-hmm. So I just want to ask you, you've told us so much about you, and there's so much I see all your passions. I see you love the Lord with all your heart. I see you have a heart for others, to bring other women up. And as you said, you're faithfully loyal to you love family and your friends. How much of who you are today is because of who your mother was?
Oh, that hit. I would say I could not be the woman that I am if my mom had not been my mom. Oh. I watched her engage life like she owned it.
Oh, wow.
I watched her live life loving and pouring out. The servant that I am, I watched my mom be. Oh, wow. And it's so interesting because so many of my family members after my mom passed used to talk about that my mom was the keeper of secrets. Mm. And I never knew that.
Wow.
And I keep secrets for a living. I tell people pay me to keep their secrets, but I watched her be fiercely loyal. Mm. And I didn't even know that that's what was happening. I watched my mom engage life as if it was hers to create. Wow. And I learned how to do that from watching her. And it wasn't always what she said, but it was how she lived. Mm-hmm. And she was authentic. Yeah. And she was unapologetically who she was. And I learned that from watching her. And I couldn't label it growing up, and I didn't fully understand it growing up. But as we moved from a mother-daughter relationship to a friend relationship, I got to see aspects of her that she did not allow me to see when she was raising me. Yeah. Because, I think there are certain things that your mom kind of shields you from until you're ready to engage those things and to see those things. And I would say all of who I am is because she was the woman that she was.
Wow. So now that you've answered that question, please tell us about your mom. What was her name?
Her name was Joyce Mae.
Yeah.
And so her sisters and our family called her Joyce Mae.
Mm-hmm.
And the little people that I used to babysit and take care of called her May May. And
Mamie?
May May, yeah.
Oh,
And she showed up as Joyce May or she showed up as May May.
yeah.
It depended on who she was.
Yeah.
But she was small in stature,
Mm.
but she took up a lot of space.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
us where she was born and when she was born.
She was born in Pulaski, Virginia, which is where I'm from. And
Uh-huh.
she was born May 11th, 1949.
Oh, so she's
Yeah.
just a few years younger than my mother, which means that she would have been coming of age during the civil rights era.
Yes.
Yeah. Did she ever talk to you about that, any experiences?
She shared with me experiences when she needed to. Like,
Yeah.
I remember when I first heard about the KKK in my neighborhood,
Uh-huh.
growing up in my community. And I remember our parents sitting us down. And I think that was the first time I learned that people were going to hate me because of the color of my skin.
Yeah.
But before that, there hadn't necessarily been a need to have that conversation. And I remember just some stories that my mom shared with me about her life based on the color of her skin.
Yeah.
My mom was very fair skinned and my grandmother was fair skinned and mixed with Scottish Irish. And so were her sisters. And so it was like they weren't white enough for the white people, but they weren't black enough for the black people.
Yeah.
And so that's when I began to see that there was a time when she struggled with her identity, but I never got to see that struggle.
Yeah.
Because I think she had resolved it by the time that she was teaching me how to resolve who I was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you know about her childhood?
Well, I know that her mother raised her. I know that her father left.
Oh.
When she was young. He was in and out of their lives, and then my grandmother remarried, and my uncles, her youngest brother's dad, helped take care of them. But it was hard. Life was hard. They were extremely poor.
Oh, okay.
They were extremely poor. It's funny because one of the things that I definitely get from my mom, I don't hoard, but I don't run out of things.
Yeah.
Like when we were growing up, she was like, a woman always takes care of her house and she makes sure that her family has the things that they need all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't allow myself to run out of things like household items because she did it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I remember when I was in college and undergrad, my friends would be like, "Oh, I don't have any toothpaste," and they'd be like, "Oh, go see Jodi. She has plenty. She has plenty."
The stock room.
Yes, it's so funny. And so when I travel with my girlfriends now, or when my niece and my best friend come to see me, they don't bring toiletries because they know Jodi's going to have plenty.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. You mentioned that her mother remarried. So what was her relationship with her stepfather like?
I think it was healthy until he passed away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How old was she around when he passed away? She was young?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
she was. I think she was probably in middle school when he passed.
Oh, wow.
And I was in middle school when her dad passed away.
Oh.
And I remember her father was an alcoholic. And so my parents protected us from him.
Yeah.
Like he would come when he lived in Tennessee. And I remember when he would come to the part of Virginia where we lived, my dad's saying, "You can come, but you can't be drunk to be around my kids." And I just remember the day that they got the phone call that he passed and she cried. And it was hard for me when she began to talk about that experience, to learn that my mom grew up without her dad, because that was foreign to me and foreign to my siblings. And I didn't know. I don't know how they survived.
Yeah. How do you think that shaped her as a woman and as a mother? Not only her father walking out when she was young, but then the stepfather passing away also.
So I think it did a couple of things. My parents divorced when I was an undergrad, and I
Yeah.
think that's one of the reasons why they stayed together as long as they did,
Oh, I see.
so that we could be adults and be out of their house
Uh-huh.
and not need to be in the house with both parents
Oh,
anymore.
I see.
Um, but I think it made her extremely protective of us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So you said
I think
they divorced when you were in undergrad. Are you the youngest child?
I'm the middle child.
Oh, okay.
My brother had left to go to the Navy.
Oh, I see.
And my sister, I think she was living in Texas at that time.
Mm-hmm.
She's older, yeah. And
Yeah.
I was in undergrad.
Yeah. So, what kind of education did your mother have?
She had some college, but she did not graduate from college.
Okay.
She when I was growing up, she worked for Volvo, which was a trucking company,
Mm-hmm.
in their accounting department.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So do you know why she didn't finish college? Did she have to drop out for some reason?
I don't I think that I don't know if my grandmother like pushed college
Mm-hmm.
for them. I think it was, hey, you do what you can to help the family and
Yeah.
whatever that looks like, and I don't think that college was a big thing.
Yeah.
Growing up in their household, it was for us. I
Yeah.
heard my entire life, you're going to college,
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
and so I didn't think, for me, there was no other option, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up being told you're going to college. And there was a part of me back then that was very compliant and I was like, okay, I'll go to college.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what she was trying to do was to teach me that one day you are going to have to walk into the room and own it.
Yeah.
And one of the ways to do that is to be educated.
Yeah.
Because my mom was very intelligent
Uh-huh.
and very wise to have not gone to college. But I look back and I realized that my mom was also extremely prophetic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I get my gift from.
Oh, wow.
And so I think she tried to encourage me to go to school because she knew I needed to be educated, but she didn't want to make me afraid
Mm-hmm.
of what was waiting on that other side,
Yeah.
being a
Yeah.
woman of color.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So, how old was she when she married your dad, and how did they meet?
Oh, they met because they hung out in the same group.
Uh-huh.
And I think my mom was 19
Oh, so
when
young.
they
Yeah.
were young. My daddy was 5 years older than my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I believe my mom was 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had 3 children, you said?
Yes.
Yeah. Was it a happy marriage? I know you said they divorced when you were in college.
I think I remember some happy moments, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of happy moments. And then I remember some not so happy moments.
Oh, okay.
And I think that I was the kid who on the weekends, my siblings was like, okay, I'm going here to stay the night. And I would be the kid, I'm staying home.
Yeah.
I did not like being separated from them, but
Oh.
I'm the kid who left home and never went back.
Oh, wow.
Both my siblings returned home and live and have made their lives at home where I'm
Mm-hmm.
from, but I'm the only one who hasn't
Yeah.
returned to and has a life outside of this place I grew up. But I do remember happy moments. I remember every year our parents would take us on vacation. We would go to my dad's sister's house. He only had one sister and 7 brothers. And we would go to our auntie's house in DC for a
Yeah.
week before my parents would pick us up for family vacation.
Yeah.
And I just remember my parents making it a point to celebrate birthdays
Oh, wow.
and celebrate holidays with our family. And we
Mm-hmm.
would have Sunday dinners with our family, either my mom's side one Sunday and my dad's side the next Sunday. So I
Oh.
remember them creating those moments
Mm-hmm.
for us to engage our family. So they push being very family oriented.
Yeah. Okay.
And I value that now.
Yeah. What was your mother's relationship with her mother like?
My mom loved her mom, and I would say that my mom was Like if my granny had a twin, it would have been my mom.
Oh.
They were both around the same height. They were both feisty and firecrackers.
Oh, wow.
They both ran things. When my mom was there, she was going to be in charge. She was going to make sure things were done. And that's how my granny was.
Yeah. Well, usually when you have two firecrackers like that, they usually butt heads. Did they bicker?
Not as much as my granny did with my mom's older sisters. My mom was the baby girl.
Oh, I see.
And she had a younger brother.
Yeah.
But the older girls gave my granny a run for their money.
Oh, I see.
I think my mom did, because I know that one time I heard my mom say that when my parents first got together, my granny was not excited about it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, she didn't approve of your father?
Yeah. And believe it or not, it's almost hard to hear myself say this, but because my dad was dark skinned.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
It is interesting. And I never got that story because my mom was so loyal. There were times when she wouldn't share stories about my granny to protect my granny.
Yeah. Did she warm up to him after a few years?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I want to talk about your faith because when I look you up online, what I see is a woman whose faith in God rules her entire life. Everything you do, your purpose is founded on Christ. Yes. So how much of this did your mother sow into you as you were coming up?
It was expected that we were going to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
My dad started out as a Sunday school teacher. So he would practice his lessons on us.
Yeah.
But my dad's family, they're full of fivefold ministry.
Oh, okay.
And my dad's family. So I think I got my faith background from my dad when I was younger, the foundation. Oh, okay. But as I aged, I watched my mother serve God through serving people, love God through loving people. And she had faith.
Yeah.
She had faith like I'd never seen. And I did learn how to have faith like my mom.
Oh, wow.
And it's interesting because sometime last year I was talking to a friend about something because I am trusting God for something in my life. And I was talking to her and I said, one of the things that I've seen that the Lord has shown me is that I have the gift of faith.
Yeah.
And I look back and I'm like, I learned that from my mom.
Oh, wow.
I learned that from watching her believe God. As an adult, being able to understand that that's what it was, for just so many things in her life and for so many things for us.
Yeah.
And to listen to her pray, even after she got sick, to listen to her pray for her babies. That's what she would call it. Her babies.
Yeah.
Listening to her pray for us, was just powerful, but there is no way I could have made it through her passing without faith in God.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did your mother get her faith from her mother?
No.
Oh, that's interesting.
No, my granny believed in God, but my granny did not practice Christianity the way that I saw my mom and my dad practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned the gift of prophecy that you believe, you said you have and you believe you got it from your mother.
Yeah. So, what year is this? This is 2023. In 2021, I was ordained as a prophet.
Oh, wow.
But my mom used to say things and then I would see it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things was with friends. She would say, you can't hang around that person. And I know that's hard because I know your age and what's important, but I'm telling you now, the person is headed for trouble.
Yeah.
And sometimes she would be very specific and I would see it.
Yeah.
Or if there was a guy I would like, she'd be like, Jodi, he's not the one and I'm going to tell you why. And then I would see it.
Yeah.
Or she would she would say things, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And I would watch it happen. Or she would just give us warnings.
Mm-hmm.
And we would be like, okay, what is wrong with you? Because I didn't know, I didn't label it as the prophetic back then growing up.
Yeah.
And she had the gift of discern. She was just very discerning.
Yeah.
She could, I don't like to use the word read people, but she could discern people very well.
Yeah.
And she would be like, that's not somebody that you need to hang with or invest your time with because, they're going to do this or this is going to happen. And I would watch it happen. And I was like, oh my gosh, how does she know this stuff? But I had experienced it, but I never had a language for it until I started apostolic prophetic training. And I was like, oh, there are a lot of us out here, and this is a real gift from God.
Yeah.
And it's not just a gift for me, it's a gift for the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I began to go through training. And then my brother and I have conversations all the time because he flows in the prophetic as well. And I was like, do you remember when mommy would say this? And he's like, yeah, she had it. And I used to think that she had people watching us,
Spies.
Yeah, she would be like, okay, what'd you do today? I know something happened. I can feel it. And I'd be like, how do you know? And my brother, it used to be so funny because we would talk about it all the time. And now that we experienced it, we know that what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah. But I watched her. Yeah, I watched her.
So, still on the topic of your mother's faith, you said that she was she was a woman of faith, and she had the gift of faith. How did her faith help her in dealing with adversity or challenges in life?
She always believed that if God allowed it, it was for a purpose.
Okay.
And if it had not turned good, then he wasn't done working.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to trust and believe that he had a plan for whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I think that helped her bounce back from things.
Yeah.
I think it helped her bounce back from disappointment.
Okay.
And situations like that. And not stay stuck in those places. That she just trusted God with her life.
Yeah. So I know we said earlier that you have a few organizations that you have founded, and they seem to be organizations that are helping women to reach their full potential and develop their relationship with God. And you said earlier that your mother loved to serve people. Did she serve women in the same way that you are now?
Kind of, yes. But I think she did hers more through friendships.
Oh, I see.
And individual relationships.
Okay.
And a lot of it she didn't share with us because, like I said, she was the keeper of secrets.
Yeah.
But when her friends needed her, or when my siblings and I, on our dad's side, we're the youngest grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
On our mom's side, we're the youngest grandkids. With the first set of her siblings. And so my older female cousins and my mom were like friends because they grew up some of them grew up together. And if they needed her, she was there. No questions asked. And nobody ever knew about it. Like, I'm still learning things that she did. And so she didn't do it necessarily in groups through a ministry the way that I do it. But she did it individually in those individual relationships.
Oh, okay. That sounds like my mother. I knew
really?
I knew she had that loving spirit, but after she passed, people, family and friends were saying, "I'll remember the time your mom did this for me. She did that for me." I was like, "What? Wait, what?" And I'm seeing thank you notes in her things and receipts of money that she sent to people, and it's like, wow, this woman had a really giving heart and a caring spirit.
Yeah. It blesses me to hear those stories.
Yeah. So you did mention when you became an adult, your relationship with your mother changed and you became good friends. Yeah. Tell us how the relationship changed. What was that like?
I remember I was in college and we began having conversations that I would have with a friend. Oh. And she wasn't judgmental. She listened. She asked questions. She was empathetic when she needed to be empathetic. She was compassionate.
Yeah.
And she moved from telling me what to do to helping me uncover and discover what was the best decision for me in those
Oh,
situations.
yeah.
And she became a safe place for me.
Oh, wow. That's some good
Yeah.
parenting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one day, the interesting thing is that when I was preparing to go to college, when we were shopping and putting things together and packing my stuff, I remember we had a conversation, and I remember her saying something like, I'm always going to be your mother because God birthed you in the earth through me.
Mhm.
But one day I'm going to become your friend,
Oh,
and that will be a whole nother journey for us.
yeah.
And she literally became my best friend.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
I read letters and cards that she sent me, when I was in college
Uh-huh.
and when I was going through certain situations, and I read those things now and they just bring tears to my eyes. Just
Yeah.
how much of an encourager and supporter she was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about your name. Just tell me about that story.
Yeah. So I was bullied by a certain group of people when I was in high school.
Oh.
And sadly, they looked like me.
Mhm.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
And I remember going home one day just devastated because my parents had always taught us to be kind. I mean, in our house, it was treat other people the way you want to be treated.
Mhm.
Period, point blank, end of story,
Yeah.
right? And so when you grow up in that environment, you assume other people are learning that at home. And it was just a horrible experience at school that day. And I remember coming home, and the interesting thing is my mom could always tell before she saw me that something was wrong.
Oh, okay.
Even in college, she would call and be like, "Are you okay, baby girl?" But this particular day I came home, and when she and my dad got home, she called me out of the room and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No." So she asked me to explain to her what happened, and I told her, and she was like, "Listen, I can't promise you that this will be the last time that someone takes out their insecurities on you.
Yeah.
But I promise you, as your mother, I'm going to help you remember who you are."
Yeah.
And so she took me to the bathroom in the mirror, and she was like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "I'm Jodi." And I was crying. And she's like, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Jodi." And she said, "That's not all of who you are. Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Jodi Melissa." And she's like, "Okay, you're getting there." And she's like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "I'm Jodi Melissa Slaughter." And she said, "That is exactly who you are. And nobody
Oh.
can take that away from you." And
Oh.
when you walk into the room, you walk into every room, whether you're invited or whether you decide to enter in as Jodi Melissa Slaughter. And
Oh.
you remind people who you are. And so when I began to research my name, Jodi Melissa Slaughter, each part of my name, I began to take on ownership and the identity of all of who I am through my name.
Yeah.
And she taught me to enter the room as myself.
Wow.
And to always be myself. And the people who love me were going to love me. And the people who decided that they weren't going to love me had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with their own insecurities.
Yeah.
And that was okay. People get to choose just like I had the opportunity to choose. And so when I introduced myself as Jodi Melissa Slaughter. And, I sell myself on social, well, I don't sell myself. I present myself on social media as Jodi Melissa Slaughter because it encompasses all of who I am. And I was not ever comfortable with that until that experience with my mom.
Oh, wow. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
Are you the only daughter or do you have a sister?
I have a sister. She's
Okay.
older than I am.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we both are, my dad used to say, "You're your mom's daughter." But we both are her daughter, and we both encompass her in some ways are very similar, but some ways are very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting to watch my sister and to be like, "Oh my God, she did that just like mommy," or "You said that just like mommy."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find myself morphing into my mother since she passed away.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's interesting how that happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little things. I'm gradually becoming her.
Me too.
Yeah.
But I recently wrote a devotional and I wrote a page to her, and I wrote, if I become half of the woman that you were, then I would have accomplished some
Wow.
mighty things in my life on this earth.
Wow. So you said that your mother and her mother were like twins. So
Yes.
when I spoke to you a few months back, you mentioned that her mother passed 2 years before your mother passed. So your grandmother passed 2 years before your mother
Yes.
passed. So that means I mean, obviously for you, you're losing a grandmother and that's hard. But just take a step back and what was that like for your mother to lose her mother?
Oh, it was so hard. And it was so hard to watch her say goodbye to her mom.
Oh.
You know, I think for the first few months, I didn't grieve so that I could help her.
Yeah.
Because now I know that it's a pain like none other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you don't really know what that pain is like, even though I'd lost other people. I didn't know what that pain was like for her until I went through it.
Yeah.
But I tried to really be present for her and just to be a safe place for her. I became her. It's interesting because my mom got sick initially in 2010 and her mother passed in 2014. So while she knew that her mom had passed and experienced the pain of that, there was still a level of cognition that she didn't have. And so I just tried using all the therapeutic tools I knew, all of the ministry tools I had ever been afforded to learn, to just really protect her, but to help her process that grief.
Yeah.
So that she wouldn't become stuck in that place.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was really hard watching her lose her mom.
Yeah.
It was hard. Yeah. I don't, there aren't even any words. I just remember her looking at the service, looking at my granny and her casket and just at one point losing it.
Oh.
You know, and knowing that there's nothing that you can do because no kid wants to see their mom in pain, you know, but you know there's nothing that you can do. And this is something that we each have to walk through individually, but she's walking through it in a way I didn't understand it at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said your mom got sick in 2010 and then she passed in 2016, right?
Yeah.
So what happened to her, if you don't mind me asking?
The doctors aren't really certain what to call it, except I think they called it an anoxic event, and she lost consciousness and passed out. And my brother, thank God, was home with her, and he had to resuscitate her until the ambulance came, and then they had to resuscitate her 2 more times. And she was in ICU for 2 weeks, and the doctor was telling us there's nothing we can do. You know, you need to go ahead and take off life support. And that was my first faith fight.
Yeah.
I believe the Lord told me on my way home, that 5-hour drive, that my mom was going to live.
Yeah.
And that we were not giving them permission to pull the plug. And we didn't. And that same doctor had to sign her discharge papers. And so after that, you know, she went to rehab for a while and then she was able to go home, but she wasn't really able to fully care for herself or be alone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we also became her caregivers. My sister and brother, her primary caregivers, because they lived there with her. And I said we each took on a role, and I moved into pastoring my mom. So I would call her every day and do worship with her, and I'd call her and pray with her. And we would read scriptures together over the phone, and I would just encourage her for those 6 years. And every day, 3 and 4 times a day, I would call her.
Yeah. It's so hard being a caregiver, to see your parents who were once so strong, you know, and to see them, I know this from my own father, to see them weakened and perhaps helpless, and sometimes just watching them decline. it's really challenging. How did you and your siblings, how did you handle that? How did you manage?
It's very interesting. I think we tag team a lot.
Yeah.
The things that I could do, I did to take some of the pressure off of my brother and my sister. But I went home a lot to relieve them on the weekends, so that I'd take care of her, and I would make sure she had things, so that my sister wouldn't have to do extra shopping and my brother wouldn't have to do extra shopping. But I think that we each began to grieve her when we brought her home from rehab in our own way, silently, before we ever really discussed it. Because as you just stated, it is very difficult becoming caregivers for the people who gave you life and who cared for you, and who, my mom was Wonder Woman and my dad was Superman my entire life. And to have to watch her now, not be able to cook for herself and clean for herself. And it was hard watching that, because my mom was so independent and liked to do those things, not just for herself, but for other people. I remember having surgeries and my mom would come to Hampton Roads and cook for me and clean for me and take care of me.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing it for her, which was my honor and my pleasure. But it was very difficult, and it was surreal for the first year that this is what we were doing. You know what I mean? This was going to be our lives from henceforth and forevermore until she passed away. It was hard. Yeah.
So sometimes in situations like that, there's fights among the siblings. So it sounds like you guys were unified and working together, which probably just is a huge blessing to your mother, whether she was aware of it or not. I always say to people that do for your parents whatever you can while you still have them, so that when they're not here, you can really say, I did what I was able to do. I bless them. And then you don't have that sense of regret, which I think is a horrible thing. And it sounds like the three of you really came together and did what you could for your mom to give her the best.
Yeah, we did. We had moments,
of course,
but we had decided earlier that we weren't putting her in an institution unless she had to, and we had no other choice. And that we were each going to do our part. And we got to dictate what that part was, because for me it was different because I didn't live there. So I couldn't be present at every doctor's appointment, but I would have my sister call, when she took my mom to the doctor, and if she needed, if the doctor was like, she needs this, then I would go home and make sure she had it. Or, I pampered her. I pampered her when I was home, because my mom was always put together. Okay. I remember going to the grocery store with my mom in red heels, a red belt, blue jeans, a white button-down shirt, hair done to the gods, and makeup on.
Nails done.
Nails done. Let me tell you, she did not play. But that's who she was. That was a part of what made her who she was. And that's the part that my sister and I both inherited. But I remember when she passed, and we were getting her clothes, and that was hard. Buying her outfit for the last time. And I told my sister, I said, when we get to the funeral home, make sure we tell them to paint mommy's nails. First of all, she is going to come back and get us if we don't have her nails painted, because she always has her nails. Even when she was sick, we painted her nails and her toes.
That's beautiful.
Because that was one of the things that she loved. We would lotion her down and put clothes on her and spray her down, because she always wore perfume. And I just remember telling my sister, please make sure mommy's nails are painted, because if they're not, listen, we're not having a service until her nails are painted, period. But we made it work. And we had, her sister would help, her sisters would help, and my her nieces, some of my first cousins would also help. And we just made it work as long as we needed to make it work.
So she was in the state for about 6 years, but then she passed. So was there a decline at the end? What happened?
So I remember she had gotten pneumonia, and she'd gone to the hospital. And Then they started trying to rehab her in the hospital, and she was not having any of it.
Yeah.
And so they sent her to a rehab facility, and I told my sister I'm coming home. And so while she was in rehab, I was there every day, the whole time I was there, from the time they opened to when they literally had to say, okay, Miss Slaughter, you have to leave. And I remember in February going, and she was in rehab, and she had gained, so she was swollen.
Oh.
And I was like, what is going on? And she would not get out of the bed.
Oh.
She refused to get out of the bed. And she would lie there with her eyes closed a lot. And I was like, this is not my mommy. Like, this is, even when she was in rehab, she would give them the business. You know, they would pick with her. She would joke with them. And I remember, I think she had developed diabetes. So I think that was another thing. And they had talked about starting to put her on dialysis.
Yeah.
And I was like, from all the medication that she was on.
Yeah.
And I just remember the Lord telling me that this is going to be the last time you see your mama alive.
Oh.
And you need to release her.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the nurses came in to do the finger stick to check her blood sugar levels. And my mom grabbed my hand and she said, help me break out of here.
Oh.
I want to go home.
Yeah.
And I lost it. But when she said, I want to go home, she said it in a way I'd never heard her say it before.
Yeah.
And I said, Mommy, do you want to go home to your house? And she shook her head no. I said, or do you want to go home to be with Jesus? And she shook her head yes.
Oh, wow.
And I just remember, you know, I grew up old school Christian, so I keep oil, anointing oil on my person.
Yeah.
Yes. And I anointed her body in that room and that bed. And I just prayed and worshiped.
Wow.
For the last 2 days that I was there. And I told her, Mommy, if you want to go see Jesus, you could go see Jesus. And I just prayed that it would be peaceful, that she wouldn't be afraid, and that she wouldn't suffer. That was the thing. I didn't want her to suffer. And so that was in February. That was like the third week in February. And March the 11th was her birthday.
Yeah.
And so they had a birthday party for her. And March 14th, my sister called me that morning, because I would call the rehab every morning just to check on her. And this particular morning, I was a few minutes late, and my sister called me and said, hey, the rehab just called and Mommy is unresponsive. And she was so calm.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, what? And she's like, she's unresponsive. And I was like, well, why are you so calm? And she's like, because I am. And I was like, okay. And I thought maybe she knew something I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so she hung up, and I said, okay. And so I began to pray, and I went in the closet. I went in my closet, and I lost it because the Lord said, remember, I told you she's not coming back.
Yeah.
She's with me. And it was probably like 10 minutes later, my sister called back and said, Mommy's gone. It was the hardest conversation, even though I felt like the Lord had prepared me for it.
Yeah.
There's really no way to prepare for it, right?
Yeah.
It was the hardest. I remember that day like it was yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
It sounds like she went peacefully, right?
Yeah, she did. And I told my sister and my brother that I didn't want her to have an autopsy.
Yeah.
I didn't want her to have any more cuts, no more medical procedures. She wanted to go. At this point, nothing mattered for me other than she was where she wanted to be.
Yeah.
And that now she had a glorified body, and that she was healed.
Amen.
And that she was younger than she was when she left.
Amen.
But it was hard.
Yeah. So it is hard. So how did you and your siblings cope during this period?
Well, at first I didn't very well. I became extremely depressed. I got mad at God, if I'm honest. And for the first time in my life, the person who prayed, everybody else knew, had no prayer.
Yeah.
And I just remember my prayer time was full of tears. And I remember one day telling God, this is all I have. It's pain and tears. And I think, we rallied together and we relied on each other. We would talk and video each other and have conversations. But I went through a really dark time, and I honestly didn't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
And had created a plan around not being here anymore. And but I had friends, those girlfriends who I'm fiercely loyal to are also fiercely loyal to me. And I really believe that they prayed me through some of the darkest days of my life. And eventually I was able to get up and I went to therapy and began to process it. But, you know, we talk about her life and her legacy and her love, and we promised each other that it was our responsibility to carry that on. And we took our time doing things, closing her accounts and, you know, packing up her things. And, you know, we didn't fight over stuff. If my brother said he wanted something, he could have it. My sister said she wanted something, you know, because I got like most of my mom's jewelry because our fingers, our ring sizes, shoes were the same size. So like we just didn't, we decided early, we're not fighting over stuff. And we just rely on each other. We get together and celebrate her life. We still take care and look out for one another. And we honor her memory by remembering her and living our life the way she taught us to live life.
So you did say that when your mom passed, obviously you were depressed, but you said that you were in a dark place and you considered taking your life. But fast forward a few years, you help people with grief now, right?
I do. Isn't that? Listen, you know
when you said to God, all you have is pain and tears, I was thinking he specializes in that. Pain and tears.
And he uses that to get glory out of his life. But to help us live lives of purpose. And I remember this young lady, one of my dear friends who was presbytery at my prophetic affirmation, who I've become friends with, Anna Taylor. And she prophesied to me one time and she was like, "You're called to the grief-stricken heart."
Oh, wow.
She said, "You are God's heart therapist in the earth. And that's one of your specialties."
Wow.
And when I got off the phone with her that night, I realized in order to be a specialist in that and to be called to the grief-stricken heart, it's something that I had to walk through so that I could look someone else in the face and say, I know how that feels. I've experienced that pain and I've gone to the other side, even though there are moments where I still have sigh. I'm sad, but I know that there's life after death.
Amen.
And I know that you can get through this. And during my dark days, the Lord said to me one time, and I laughed because this is how he speaks to me. He said, "You didn't die. You didn't go to the grave with her. And you can choose to live. But that's your choice."
Wow.
And I know, I was like, if I did take my life and got to heaven, my mama would be like, "What are you doing here?" Like literally, she would be so angry because that's not what she would have wanted. And I decided that I was going to live through the pain to get to the other side. And I kept quoting, you know, weeping endures for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And we don't know when that morning is going to be, but all we have to do is make it through the night. Whatever that night season looks like, because God promised that joy was going to come. And that it's my responsibility now to help other people find joy in the morning.
What a testimony to come from, you know, the depths of despair to helping people through their grief now. That's beautiful. So this year, I believe, I'm terrible at math, but I believe that this year will make it 7 years since your mother passed on. What has life been like without her?
Oh, you know, there have been some absolutely hard days because there's so many celebrations that I wish she were here for. You know, I have the sweetest friends at my ordination service. One of my friends, Jacqueline, got a bouquet of flowers and set them in the seat beside my dad, where my mom would have sat for my ordination service. but, writing a book, getting, some awards and accolades and doing so many things that she and I talked about, and she's not here.
Yeah.
Those things have been hard, but the fact that she's not here pushes me to accomplish everything that I'm supposed to accomplish in the earth, because that's what she taught me.
Yeah.
And that's what she wanted.
Yeah.
And those were the prayers I heard her pray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just say, and I'll probably edit this out because I like the podcast to be about the women and not about me. But when you were talking about your mother saying she wanted to go home to be with the Lord, and then you were sitting there with anointing oil and worshiping, I was just thinking, does this woman know my story? Because my mom, after the treatments and the cancer treatments weren't going so well because she's older, and then she had a stroke. They had to stop the treatments. One day she said to me when I went to visit her in the hospital, I want to go home to be with my maker. And it was so hard for me to hear. And then, I was anointing her with oil. And those last few days, just singing worship songs or playing worship songs over her. It was so similar. So I just thought that was really amazing.
That's awesome. But, I wish I was grateful for that opportunity. And I knew I had to be the one to do it.
Yeah.
I knew I had to release her, but I was grateful that I had that opportunity. Yeah. And so what an honor for you to be able to help your mom transition like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, what an honor,
Yeah.
What an honor.
It really was. What legacy does Joyce Mae leave behind?
Wow. A legacy of love, kindness, strength, determination, definitely resiliency.
Yeah.
And I would say faith and living life to the fullest.
Oh, wow. Before she passed, did she get to see any grandchildren?
No.
Oh, okay.
None of us have grandkids, but I have nannied kids, and they call my mom Nana Joyce Mae Mae. So, and she loved them. Yeah. She would fly in to Virginia Beach to help me take care of them, they were her grandkids. And so she got to experience that, and they loved her, and they came to her service. They came to her homegoing service. Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing about the life and legacy and faith of your mother. She sounded like the most amazing person. And I just see so many parallels between your story and my story with my mother. It's very interesting that God brought us together on this show.
It is. It's very interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and using your platform to, because this is a part of the healing process, right? Being able to talk about it and remember her and to talk about, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the hard.
Yeah.
Because if we all live long enough, everyone will experience it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Powerful platform. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. If you or anyone you know is struggling with thoughts of self-harm, please call 988 to speak to someone at the Suicide and Crisis Helpline. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Sweet Mother Podcast. We'll be back next month with the story of another amazing woman. A very special thank you to our paid monthly subscribers who make it possible for us to stay on the air. We are listener supported, so if you are able to give a small monthly amount, please click on the Support This Podcast link in the show notes. If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and perhaps even leave a review so we can continue to expand our audience. If you have a comment or question about the show, you can email me at sweetmotherpodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to hear more from me, check out my blog at medium.com/@SOHKOR. That's medium.com/@SOHKOR. You can also find me on Instagram at SOHKOR_rights. That's at SOHKOR_rights. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.